Last time we finished by assembling the spars. All the spars, especially the mast, needed plenty of sanding to get the sides nice and smooth. I routed all the edges to make those nice and smooth as well. Because I made the spars from southern yellow pine, I decided this was too light a colour wood to go with the colour scheme of the boat. So I used an oak wood stain to make them darker before applying epoxy resin. I hadn't yet made the gaff, so I marked this out and cut it out from a piece of wood that I'd scarf jointed together earlier. I passed this through the timber thicknesser to get it to an even thickness. And then sanded it all down into a pleasing curve. Okay, it's time to own up to the one step back. I had covered the companionway in epoxy resin one fine day and left the boat uncovered that night. Unfortunately, the next day I saw that most of the resin had a white bloom over it, and I think this had maybe happened because it was too cool that night and maybe a bit too humid. So after trying various ways to rub it off, it became apparent that I had to sand the whole lot off and start again. So the next time I coated these parts in epoxy resin, I did it earlier on in the day. I made sure it was a nice fine day, and I kept an eye on it while the epoxy resin cured. Then I decided to give various other parts I prepared for the boat another couple of coats of epoxy resin. So I rubbed these down with a 400 grit sandpaper and wiped off the dust using paint thinners on a rag. Before coating them all in epoxy resin. As you can see here, the spars are no longer oak coloured. This turned out to be too dark, so I coated the whole lot with a mahogany wood stain instead, which suits the boat much better with its reddish tint. While the epoxy resin was curing, I sanded down the top of the boat, ready for some primer. And once this had dried, I gave it a coat of marine gloss. In the floorboards of the boat, I'd made two lift-out sections, which I decided with hindsight were going to be too long and cumbersome, so I decided to make these into two shorter lift-out sections on each side. I did this by adding some extra blocking, cutting the lift-out sections in two, sanding everything carefully back, with an added bit of adjustment when I did a trial fit. There, that's better. By this time, the epoxy resin on the spars and the other parts had dried to the tacky stage, so I was able to give these a second coat of resin to dry overnight.